Welcome to Faith in 5, a weekly video devotional designed to discuss practical spiritual concepts in 5 minutes or less. I'm your host, Mark Van Dellen. I do a lot of marriage prep coaching, and sometimes I'll sit down with couples and ask them a couple questions that seem like they don't have a whole lot of meaning, like they're insignificant. Like, how did your family handle holidays growing up? How did your family vacation growing up? And at first blush, it's like, well, we did this, we did that. But then you can see sometimes the couples start to see that, whoa, the way that I did it is way different than the way you did it. And I didn't think holidays were going to be a thing or the vacations were going to be a problem in our marriage. Like, we've got enough to worry about. But these conversations usually are so healthy to start processing, what do you want to do and how do you want to do this? And just this past summer, I had a couple that when I asked them this vacation question, the female in the couple talked about how her family would always travel with a binder. I mean, it was like spreadsheets and minute-to-minute calendaring of their vacation plans. And she said, honestly, we went a lot of cool places, and I have seen a whole lot of things, but I didn't enjoy much of it because it was just so like we were having a fun time at one place, and my parents were like, all right, time to move on. We've got to be to the next place in the next 30 minutes, so let's go. And she said, I didn't feel like we enjoyed it. And you could see the guy she was ready to marry looked across the way and said, wow, that actually sounds a little better than my vacations growing up. When we vacationed, we didn't have any plan at all. He said, I've gone to a lot of places, but I didn't really experience them. We would just kind of show up, and then all of a sudden a week would go by and we'd head home. And I felt like, wait, did we have a vacation? And so I think the problem with our lives is most of the time we're looking for an either or. Do you vacation with a binder or do you vacation with no plan? Why does it have to be either or? That's what we're asking in this series called And. We're trying to find and leverage the power of and. What if it's both? And so I've been reading a book called Unscripted by Ernie Johnson, who's a really good sportscaster, one of the best. And he's talking about his story. And he says in his book, if there's one thing in this life that I've learned is that it's not to fear the unscripted, but to embrace it. And so Ernie talks about how, he's got a plan for his life. He's got a general understanding of where he's going. But he said the most exciting and the most meaningful things have come in the times of being unscripted. And so what if we were able to, in our lives, as we think about engaging our faith, what if we were able to find the balance between that? And I've been thinking about what Bible verse or what story does Jesus tell that might help us understand this. And it comes from Luke 5, 1 through 7. Jesus comes upon his disciples and their boats, and their boats are now empty. And he says, hey, let's get into the boats and push off a little bit because Jesus is about to teach to a crowd of people. And so he wants to go a little bit away from shore so that all the people can be on shore and he can do some teaching. But then when they're done with that portion of the day, a unique thing happens. Jesus says, hey, let's go out a little further in the deep water and cast your nets and you'll catch some fish. And his disciples look at him and he's like, Jesus, we've been fishing all night and we didn't catch anything. We're kind of tired. And they're almost communicating this doubt, like, Jesus, I'm the professional here. Like, we know how to fish. You just got done teaching. Why don't you do you and we'll do us? And we know there aren't fish out here. We know where the fish are, and they're certainly not right here. And but then before they give Jesus a spot to respond, you could almost hear it. It's like, fine, if you say so, I told you so. And so they go out a little deeper. They cast their nets and they catch fish. And see, it's in that moment, it's in our lives that we can learn a lot from that. There are times where we want to have everything perfectly planned out. We like control. And there's nothing wrong with understanding what you're good at getting better at what you're good at, studying, learning, and developing a set of skills. Really taking the time to dig into what are your values, what's your core purpose and beliefs. That's value. There's a lot of programs out there. There's life coaches that help you figure out a life plan and all of these sorts of things. They're great and you should do that. But you should also leave room for Jesus to say, I get that you're good at that, but I want you to then do this with it. I get that you're a professional, but how about you try that a little bit over here and we'll see what happens. And Ernie Johnson admits that when I have all this plan and while I do what I do well, the places that are the most exciting are when God shows up and says, here's actually the plan that I have for you. And you can look for the places that they map up. It doesn't have to be an either or. It can be a both and. And so as you think about your faith and how you're going to engage it in the coming weeks, consider this metaphor that I heard my pastor say to me a long time ago. He said, what you need to do as a young Christian, and I was early in my career, is to figure out what you're going to be good at. Essentially, he said, buy a boat and figure out how to sail, figuratively, right? But then he said, what you need to do after you buy your boat and you figure out how to sail is put your sail up. And that's when God shows up in the directions that he blows your boat, the way that he shows up and fills your sail with wind. That's where you go with the planned versus the unscripted. So this week, as you engage your faith, consider the ways that you can do better, work on the plan, but also leave room for God to speak truth into your life, to put wind in your sails and go where he calls you to go.